Hello everyone! So I know it's been a little while since I've made a video, and that phrase in general has become very familiar in my videos. But I've been thinking a lot about a video that John Green made a few weeks ago. The perception one? If you haven't seen it yet, you might want to go watch it before you finish watching this video, and not just because it's better, but because it's going to really heavily influence what I'm saying today. So, go click over there. After watching that video, I decided that I had to go watch Harvey because it was definitely a necessity. I've been at a point recently where I'm feeling like I'm treading my wheels a little bit, and so his video really spoke to me, where you never know what little thing that you're doing now that could shape the future. And I have to say that Harvey was actually very, very good. Not just because I'm a Jimmy Stewart fan, but because it kind of makes you accept that the world's a little bit crazy. And that not only is that something you should accept, but that it's something you should kind of really treasure. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'll just pile my recommendation on there on top of John's and tell you should. But watching the movie got me thinking about a book that kind of did something similar for me. Some of you might know that the reason I started reading John Green novels is because my little brother kept asking me to. And whenever he went into the Air Force, I decided that I was missing him enough that I had to read everything John Green had ever written, which at that point wasn't going to take as long as it would now. But the only John Green novel that Brian happened to have on his bookshelf, because he'd taken Looking for Alaska with him, was An Abundance of Catherines. So I picked it up and immediately fell in love. That book is hilarious. Now don't get me wrong, An Abundance of Catherines didn't inspire any sort of epiphanies for me, but it always makes me happier reading it than I was before I read it. Every single time. And that's a really special quality in a book, and one that I don't think is appreciated enough whenever it comes to literature. When I first moved to Chicago, so back whenever this vlog started years ago, I reread An Abundance of Catherines because I remember that the first time that I had read the book, it made me laugh a lot, and I was feeling kind of disconnected, and I wanted to laugh and remember that the world was still a merry place, even if I really didn't know anybody in this huge city that I was in. As I was finishing up my reread of that book, John Green came into Chicago, and so I had the book in my backpack, and I was like, well, I have to go see him. He'll sign my book. That'll be awesome, right? See, I have photo proof. If I hadn't had An Abundance of Catherines in my bag at the time, I probably wouldn't have stayed at the signing as long as I did. I got really, really anxious in big crowds at that point, and it was hot, and my hair was crazy, and I was wearing a black t-shirt, and I remember thinking that was a really, really bad idea. And I wasn't very familiar with Chicago, so I was afraid still of walking home to my apartment in the dark, and so I kept thinking I needed to leave earlier. Because of the crowd, and because I had that book that I really loved in my bag, and I wanted to meet the person who wrote it, everything changed. I know that's like a seriously heavy thing to say, but 4 years later, it's still true. If it wasn't for that signing, I wouldn't have been inspired to go beyond writing a young adult novel for my thesis and actually like fighting and campaigning for other people to be able to do it too. Of course, also, if it wasn't for that signing, I wouldn't have met Muda, and she's my best friend, and she's the reason that I started working with LeakyCon, and if I hadn't been to LeakyCon, then I wouldn't have met any of the young adult authors that I've met, or Darren Criss, and let's face it, I really like Darren Criss. And I wouldn't have met some of my closest friends. I wouldn't have started bugging Susie to watch John Green videos, and so she wouldn't have been making YouTube videos, and then the whole thing would have completely blasted out of control. And let's face it, if I hadn't gone to that signing, I wouldn't be the kind of teacher who makes Doctor Who and Harry Potter references whenever she's teaching Shakespeare in her literature class. So I know this is kind of a rambly video about why I really, really like John Green and a book he wrote, but I feel like it's something you need to think about. There are little things in your life that you do that could completely change the person you're going to become. And I hope you still have a lot of those ahead because they're kind of awesome to look back on. So until my next video, where I will hopefully be able to review that Wasserman book that I'm reading, I just hope you're having a really great week, and if you are stuck in an ice storm like I am, then stay warm and stay safe. Bye! Stuck. No, not on my chair!